Welcome back to the channel. Today I was inspired to do a statistical analysis of Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. And the main reason why I'm putting them both together into the same video is that I do believe that these two teams will meet in the national championship game. At least that's what I'm loosely saying right now. We'll see as my analysis of their teams and the games goes on. But I wanted to bring you a statistical analysis of these two because I think I actually found some things that all of you will find interesting. So please stay throughout the whole video and hopefully you'll learn something really cool. So before I jump right into it, I'm going to tell you about two cool things that I have going on right now. I have a Discord channel called Logic and Football where I get in there, we just have conversation. I'll let you know my thoughts. You know, that are outside of the video. It's a bit less formal. You can have more of a engaging conversation with me, share memes, all that type of stuff if you want to. We can definitely do that. But also I have a Patreon channel if you want to support the channel in any type of way. There's tiers on there. You can see the benefits of donating to the channel. So please join in if you can. But without further ado, let's talk about Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. So first of all, Joe Burrow is at 10.7, or I'll say 11 yards per attempt, basically, at 78% completion percentage. These two numbers together are very, very impressive. You don't even have to add in the fact that he has 48 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. I'll even go a little bit deeper into this and say that he never dropped below 9 yards per attempt in any month average of this season. And it's kind of crazy because if you look at August, September, his numbers were extremely high and they just they stayed consistent as it went along. September, October, November actually was one of his higher numbers, and that's when he actually played some really good competition too, including Alabama. And this is not on a small number of passes. Joe Burrow to this day has thrown 439 passes in the 2019 season and has completed 342 of them. So not only is he very effective in passing the ball, that's what the yards per attempt usually tell us. Like that's actually some of those historically good numbers. When you get up there above 10 on average in the season and you get into 11, Tua, for context, Tua Tagovailoa last year had 11.2 yards per attempt. And that was for one of the highest rated passer ratings in the history of the NCAA. And Joe Burrow's passing yards per attempt is like right there on it. So it tells you how good he's been. But he's also very efficient. 78% completion percentage is not normal. Like you don't have people hitting sub 80% completion percentage, no matter if the competition is good, bad, horrible, elite or not. You just don't typically see people with a 78% completion percentage. And so for comparison, Trevor Lawrence's completion percentage is 69%, which is good. That's great even. But 78, Joe Burrow's almost 10 completion percentage points higher than Trevor Lawrence on that front. So it's really interesting. So since I mentioned Trevor Lawrence, let's actually go over there. Trevor Lawrence this year has 9.4 yards per attempt on the season. So that's actually really good. You know, in comparison to Joe Burrow, you know, that doesn't seem as great. But that's just the fact that Joe Burrow's numbers are extremely good. 9.4 yards per attempt is nothing to sneeze at. I would say that in college, and I usually get this, college football nerds they've influenced me to start doing this a little bit more, but 7.5 yards per attempt is about serviceable in the passing game. So Trevor Lawrence is almost 2 full yards higher than that. And so I think he's actually having a great year on that front with a 69% completion percentage. So he's having two solid numbers next to each other as well. So he's very effective and he's efficient while doing so on 337 attempts. So here's the crazy part. Joe Burrow has 100 more passing attempts than Trevor Lawrence. And what makes that interesting is that Joe Burrow's completion percentage, as I said, is being 10 completion percentage points higher than Trevor Lawrence's, even though he's thrown 100 more passes. That's kind of crazy. With that said, you also have to consider that Clemson's offense is a lot more run heavy. It's a bit more run first. I don't think a lot of people realize that at times, that Clemson has a very high run rate in their offense. But with that said, look at this. So I said Trevor Lawrence's numbers are really good. He also improved from last year. Last year, his total at the end of the year was 8.3 yards per attempt and a 65% completion percentage. And that's just a total average for the whole year. So he obviously has gotten better. But I'll even go down a little bit more. Let's get more microscopic. He got better each month this season. In August, September, Trevor Lawrence was 8.3 yards per attempt, which fits why people were saying that he looked off, that his game looked kind of bad. It's because he actually wasn't playing that magnificent. He looked like his freshman self, or maybe even worse, in the month of August and September. But look at this climb. In October, it jumped up to 9.3 yards per attempt, which is where its average is now. In November, it jumped up to 10 yards per attempt. And this is when they started crushing people. So you can see Trevor Lawrence's production went up. He became more effective and more efficient as the year went along, which started to explain why they were beating people, 52-7 and, 45-14. Like, you start seeing those scores more often because Trevor Lawrence went crazy. And then in the one game they played in the month of December, he had a 13.7 yards per attempt. And so he showed out against Virginia basically, and really destroyed them. And so it's just you're starting to see Clemson does this weird thing where they start the year off slow. And I guess they can afford to do that because they don't have a lot of things that can challenge them. A lot of elite teams don't get a chance to get challenged in that way. And so Clemson, they slowly build up to very efficient performances as the year goes on. And you can see that happening again. I'm interested to see if that trend continues in the playoff. I guess we'll find out once they meet Ohio State. So I'm going to give you a little bit more context of these two numbers I gave you between Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. For context, let's look at Tua talking about those numbers through the 9 games that Tua has played this year. So this year, through the 9 games that he played, Tua Tagovailoa had an 11.3 yards per attempt. That just shows you, Tua is really good. I don't think people realize that. They want to underestimate him and say there's the receivers at some time, and they just don't realize how hard it is to be just that good and that consistent. He was slightly better than he was his freshman year. The first year starting. That's crazy. At a 71.4% completion percentage. So he has a higher completion percentage than Trevor Lawrence, but he has a lower completion percentage than Joe Burrow, which shows you just how efficient that Joe Burrow has been this season. I don't think you guys realize how hard it is to be that efficient. But these numbers, anytime you get close to 70%, you are doing great. So for Joe to be hitting 80 is just out of this world. So, but either way, Tua is a highly effective passer. And to see that Joe Burrow is right in those numbers with him, that's kind of crazy. And seeing Trevor Lawrence is slightly below that. But that also may be more so due to style of play. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit as we get into the video a little bit more. Also, for more context, Jalen Hurts this year, and I'm going to do a separate video for Jalen and Justin Fields. Jalen Hurts this year, I believe he led the nation in yards per attempt at 11.8, which is basically 12 yards per attempt on a 72% completion percentage. That's amazing. Now, he only threw 309 passes this year so far, 309 attempts. So they're a run-heavier offense, which may explain some of that efficiency, but still to be able to take advantage of the run game in that manner and still do that well, that shows you that he hits his offense, the passing game, is quite astounding. And so you can see we're talking about an upper echelon of passing game here. A lot of quarterbacks in the nation don't hit these numbers. I don't think you guys realize that. Just go look up passing stats and you'll see what I mean. So in the current state of things, Joe Burrow is the more effective passer between Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence in his offense, which is saying something since Trevor Lawrence is quite effective as well, as I pointed out. With that said, Trevor Lawrence is not doing bad at all, so don't take it that way. I'm not saying that. Some of this can be attributed to the fact that Clemson is more of a run-focused team, like I was just saying. Don't lose sight of that point. Clemson is a much more effective running team than LSU is. And we could probably get into the numbers of that too, but I won't do that in this video. So how much does that factor into things? If Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion, had the same passing attempts as Joe Burrow, he wouldn't produce the same stats. Of course, you can factor in the style of play and the scheme that they run, but I also think it's experience as well. Joe Burrow is a senior. I don't think people realize that he's a senior. And I think that gives Joe Burrow the advantage, which is why he tends to be much more efficient with the ball, I believe. So this isn't making any statements about who will be better as a pro player or anything. I don't even want to touch that topic with the 10-foot pole, so let's not even go there. But the last thing we'll talk about today is how they spread their targets around to the wide receiver and maybe the running back. So I'm going to start with LSU. So Joe Burrow this year, he's hit Jamar Chase for 73 receptions. Basically 73 passes Jamar Chase is caught for almost 1,500 yards and 18 touchdowns. That's crazy. Then Jefferson actually led the team in receptions with 88 receptions. Justin Jefferson for over 1,200 yards receiving and 14 touchdowns. And then, of course, Terrence Marshall had 37 catches, 545 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So his top three receivers had really, really good year. Three receivers over 500 yards, which doesn't beat Alabama from last year, actually. Alabama had four receivers with at least 30 catches and at least 500 yards receiving last year, which is crazy. But this year, LSU's offense, specifically their three wide receivers, the trio, was very, very good. And then, of course, Thaddeus Moss, the tight end, came up next with 38 receptions for 435 yards. And guess who had the third most catches on the team? You would think it's Thaddeus Moss with the 38 receptions because that's the last one I mentioned. But it's actually the running back, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, had 50 receptions. Joe Burrow hit Clyde Edwards-Helaire a lot. Clemson, you better watch out, for 399 yards and a touchdown this year. So he didn't score a lot of touchdowns, but he converted a lot of first downs. Alabama knows about that. He had the third most catches on the team as a running back. So you can see Joe Burrow spread the ball around quite a bit. It wasn't one player dominating the stat game. So let's see what Clemson looked like. So Clemson's wide receivers also very balanced in their catches. T. Higgins, 52 receptions for 1,082 yards and 13 touchdowns. So he still was the best receiver on the team. I remember, I'm going to gloat a little bit. I made a video earlier this year saying Justin Ross isn't ready to be a superstar. Don't make him that way. And as I said, he wasn't even the best receiver on his team this year, but he was second best. Justin Ross had 55 receptions, so he had the most catches for only 742 yards, but he still had 8 touchdowns. Then the next leading receiver was Amari Rodgers at 27 receptions for 380 yards. And then Overton, 20 receptions for 322 yards. So you can see they had most of the catches go through Higgins and Ross, but then they had the other two receivers catch in. But I left off the third leading receiver in terms of catches for a reason, because once again, it's the running back. Travis Etienne, who probably should have been a Heisman candidate himself this year, had 29 receptions. That's good for third most catches on the team for 298 yards and a couple of touchdowns. So as you can see, the running backs in this game can make a difference, but I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire for sure will make an impact in this game. Clemson better watch out if they haven't started studying that. They're probably looking at Ohio State, but if they make it, which I believe they will, to the national championship to play LSU, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is one to keep your eyes on, especially if you feel like you're locking up those other guys. You probably got this guy open somewhere. I just wanted to break this down a little bit, show you some of the statistical things. What did you find interesting about what I said today? Did you see any stats or numbers that you didn't know coming into this video? And so let me know and see. Let me know if you want me to break it down a little bit more. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next video.